Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where I interview educators and entrepreneurs on leveling up. Each episode, I bring in someone who's dope, and we just have a conversation on how you can live your best life. Today's guest is Dr. Nooshin Valizadeh. Oh my gosh, Valizadeh. Did I say that right?
It's Nooshin
Valizadeh.
Valizadeh. Yeah, sure.
Okay, see? Okay, I'm just messing it up. People, I hate to do that because people mess up my last name all the time.
Don't worry about it. Nooshin Valizadeh, it's fine.
Okay, awesome. Nooshin. Dr. Nooshin came onto my radar via Twitter. And you know how I do this, people, because I've explained this in the past. When people come through and I'm like, yo, this person is awesome, I Google. I go to YouTube. I go, have they done any other interviews? Have they done these talks and speeches? And to see what's the vibe like, will they mesh well here? And I was like, oh, this is some nice stuff. I need to have her on the show. So I reached out and she said yes. And today, people, we're going to really talk about, how do you make things happen in your life and really sort of stake claim of who you are, what you are, and push forward. And so for those who are watching, well, see, I don't do a live show anymore. Look at this. So for those who will be watching in the future or listening on iTunes or SoundCloud, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Nooshin Valizadeh. Some of my students may call me Dr. V or Professor V. Friends call me Noosh, whatever floats your boat, really. I am an activist. I am an educator, and I've been teaching actually at USC, and will also be teaching at UCLA in the fall, mainly social justice and political kind of awareness types of courses, but mainly in the higher ed and sociology departments. And in terms of activism, the main work I do, I'm on the board for Peace Over Violence, which is a prevention and intervention organization that fights against sexual and domestic violence. As a board member there, I'm able to do a lot of different panels, a lot of speaking engagements, and a lot of education for youth and college level and just the community about ways to prevent violence and kind of just hopefully create a cultural shift, dismantle rape culture, dismantle the oppressions that are going on in our marginalized communities. So that's pretty much it. I'm also a mom. So that's basically a bit about me and what I do.
Okay. So what drives you? What is your mission?
What is my mission? Okay. My mission in life, honestly, it's really to create better conditions for women and trans folks in this country, people of color in this country, whatever ways that I can do that, using different platforms that I've been able to have access to, using different privileges that I may have. That's my ultimate mission, is I would like to have a society and a country that is better, where the conditions are better than they were for my generation. And I guess what drives me, a lot of what's been driving me, it changes. So it really depends on what, the situation is and what the work actually is needing. But for the most part, the most consistent driving force right now has been my daughter, and then also the students that I've been able to teach, students that I'm able to keep in touch with. I love social media for that, being able to see what my students are doing and knowing that they're actually still supporting my work and seeing what I'm talking about, and knowing that I have that type of influence and that type of access to individuals who are actually younger than I am, who are actually going to be out there in the world. I think that's the part that really drives me and also keeps me on my toes.
So what does it mean to you to dwell in the possibility? And why do you think so many of us sabotage ourselves?
What do you mean by sabotage ourselves?
Not living up to our fullest potential because we're talking ourselves out of taking that next step. whether it's the imposter syndrome or not even applying to this school or applying for this job because we don't think that we are good enough or worthy.
Yeah, I understand. I think a lot of it, of course, there's part that has to do with us ourselves, right? About any sort of internalized images we have that are poor about ourselves. But I think there also has to be some accountability for the types of resources and access that we have that we may not have as individuals growing up. Role models, you know, the kinds of who do we have to look up to, and are those people modeling things that are going to encourage us to do better? If we don't have it in our family, we don't have it in our community, then we're looking at media, then we're looking at, you know, pop culture, and are those models going to get us there? So part of it is not just ourselves, but also who's coming back to us. Are people making it out of the community and going back? Are we getting any sort of funding to support, you know, college counselors or people who are just going to support you? Or are the people in those roles going to have their biases that are actually enforcing and telling us not to believe in ourselves? That's a lot of what happened to me. If I didn't have my family, I really wouldn't have had a single person helping me, you know, pursue my education. So without my family, I would have just really believed that I was like a bad kid, that I wasn't going to do well, that I'm just trouble because of what my teachers, and I did have counselors. I had guidance counselors. I had college counselors, and they weren't giving me positive message about myself. I saw a lot of difference between how I was treated and how other kids were treated who had, you know, were a little bit more privileged. So there's that. And I think that with ourselves, there's a quote, Alice Walker said, the most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have any. So I feel like not realizing what we do have power, what components in that are reachable, even if they're small, what we have power over accomplishing, what we are able to actually pursue, what kind of areas we're able to enter, what type of you know, opportunities are out there that we can actually just push ourselves to go for. You know, are you someone who is pregnant, who should be looking for, who wants to look for a job, but you're not going to, you know, go to an interview because you think they're going to see you and discriminate against you? Yeah, that can definitely happen. But there's also you as a woman who is in control of going and putting that foot forward. If you're going to be discriminated against, that's on them, and it's 100% something that, you know, to worry about that can happen, but you're still getting in your own way. And that's kind of more of a personal story that I've learned from that happened to me. So yeah, just kind of like, what are the obstacles that you're putting in front of yourself, being aware of them, versus what society has put in front of you.
So how can people break down those obstacles and actually see the greatness that is within themselves?
Well, in terms of people, are we talking just really broad? Are we talking people in the kind of work that we do? Are we talking younger folks? Like, who are we talking about?
Well, just broad in general, you know, or even from your own perspective. You know, like it's one thing, you know, when we look at sort of overcoming certain obstacles or conditions or, you know, things that we may come across in our life, whether it be the school, the community, or our own home. And there's another thing for you to actually sort of dismantle those and own your power. And so how does someone actually take those obstacles, move them out of the way, and see the greatness that they have within themselves?
I think accepting that you're going to have obstacles is a huge part of it. I mean, you have to know that for anything you're going to accomplish in life that is going to, where you're going to really seek success or actually even commit to, complete, and it can be anything from even having fitness goals versus having educational goals, a degree, a job, whatever. You have to be okay with the fact that you're going to come across obstacles. Nothing's just going to fall in your lap. You can be very smart. You can be very talented. But if you don't actually put the energy and the work in, you're just going to be a smart and talented person who didn't get really far. You know, that the work and the effort is a huge component of it. So I feel like it's even more powerful to not be that intelligent or things to not come that easy for you, and for you to actually make it further if you put the work in, than someone where things came easy and they were told they're smart their whole life. So a lot of what I've been able to experience personally is having certain types of goals and being like, wow, I know that this seems so far away, like entering a doctorate program, right? I shifted my entire career, went to a whole different area that I wasn't, I didn't grow up thinking that I was going to do, that I didn't actually go to school for. I realized I want this whole other career. I'm going to go start this program. And if I kept thinking about all of the obstacles that we're going to get, that are going to come in for me to get this doctor and finish a dissertation, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I had to do like smaller goals. Like I just need to apply, or I just need to take my GRE. And then, okay, let me just apply to as many colleges as I can. And once I get admitted or denied, then I'll make a decision. And having just the smaller goals, knowing that there are going to be obstacles in between, and then thinking, what is my end goal that I'm not going to allow any obstacle to get in the way of? So final year of my doctorate was my dissertation period, and I actually had a newborn. And so I didn't really go into too much of the dwelling, as much as I said that there's 2 things I really want this year, and those are just the 2 things. I was trying not to do like too many, right? I said it was important for me on a personal level to try and exclusively nurse my child. And then on the other end, I wanted to finish my doctorate on time. I wanted to finish my dissertation on time, because I know the type of person I am. So you also have to know yourself. I know that if I pushed it off, then I would get comfortable pushing it off, and I'd be an ABD person. So I knew if I allowed any obstacle to get in the way where I pushed it off, I could be like, 10 years down the line still, oh yeah, I have to finish that thing, but now, I don't want to look at it again. It's been too long. I made excuses. So I decided instead of being someone who's going to let every obstacle get in the way of me finishing this, which was easy to do with a newborn that I'm trying, I'm going to let no obstacle. And I just really stuck with that. I'm just going to let nothing get in the way of what I'm trying to accomplish. What do I want? I don't know where I'm going to go after, but all I want right now is to have my doctorate and be able to nurse my child. So I just did everything I needed to do where that was the goal and the focus. I woke up in the morning, and those were the 2 things that I needed to just make sure I was working towards. And that's how I did it, really. And there were a lot of things that would come in. Oh, friends in town. This is going on. This is happening. Oh, your paper's not amazing. It's not going to be the most incredible piece you've ever written, but it was good enough. And that's what I had to do at times. Okay, well, this is good enough to submit. I'm going to let it go, because I can't let anything get in the way of the end goal. So I guess to make a long story short, it's to have your end goals in place, but making them be more short-term for the long-term goal, and just kind of focusing on the short-term goal, knowing there's going to be obstacles that are going to come in, but deciding that unless it's like a life, altering thing, that you're not going to let it kind of defocus you.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that you have continued to propel you forward?
The biggest one would just be, 1, don't get too comfortable anywhere or with anything. The moment you get comfortable is when you're going to lose your momentum, and you're going to be looking back and be like, oh, I was doing really well at this whatever X stage, right? You need to always be growing, always pushing yourself. And then the second one is to not get in the way of your greatness, which I kind of mentioned before with if you're pregnant. And that was really connecting to a story that I have that actually hits both of those. I was working on a covered California grant through USC that at the time it was a professor of mine, but now he's a colleague. He had received this grant, hired me as the director of outreach and education on this covered California grant. We did really well. We exceeded our goals. I was pregnant as well. And I was pretty sure that we're going to get another grant to support position because I did so well. But, these are still things in someone else's control. You can't just think, I'm going to do an awesome job. I'm going to do great. And this is going to be in the bag for me. It's not like that, right? So I was very comfortable. I didn't look for other possible opportunities in case when the grant ended, I didn't have a job. once I started realizing, oh, wow, it looks like even no matter how well we did, things are changing with the powers above, with regard to Cover California and what they were going to pay out. And we might not get a grant. And if we do, it might not be enough to support my position. At that point, I'm like 6-7 months pregnant. And I did not apply to one single job. I did not go to one single career fair because I'm like, well, how's that going to work? You know, like I'm going to show up and be super pregnant. I know that they discriminate. These people still discriminate, even though it's unlawful against women who are pregnant. That I'm going to have a newborn. I'm going to need to take time off. That's all awkward. Like I'm thinking all these things that are getting in the way of my possibilities when all I really needed to do was apply for jobs. And then maybe go to an interviews. And then at least do everything on my end that was in my control and the powers that I had. If I get discriminated against or I don't get a job or something happens when the child comes and I can't do that's later. But I'm already getting in my own way when I'm only 6 months pregnant. And this was a decision that made it so I was really out of work for a good year. It worked out because I got to really focus on my dissertation and have these new goals, which I told you before. But I will never do that again. I will never think that because of all these other reasons why things might not work out for me, that I'm going to also add to it with my own, stopping myself from pursuing anything that is going to be better or have a good long-term gain for me, with my career, with family, with life. I'm just never going to do that again. Yeah.
So I want to throw this out there to you, since you mentioned that you were comfortable, because what happens a lot in our field in education, whether it's K through 12 or higher ed, there is a greater sense of comfort in my job versus someone who works in another field, because they understand budget cuts can come down, a new CEO can come in, and my job can be gone tomorrow. But in education, for some reason, we get hired by the institution, we get hired by a school district, and we work. And we just get comfortable. And it never crosses our mind that next year you could be let go.
Yep.
If you can't speak to the need for educators to get out of that comfort mindset, to always think of themselves as a business of one, and understanding that they must always be prepared for the next opportunity and not be blindsided when what they thought was, I'm going to be here forever, actually comes to an end.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I see that a lot, and I've done it before as well. Just being like, I've got this in the bag. I'm comfortable. With that experience, and it's happened. It's part of human nature. We just get comfortable if things are going well, and we stop thinking of the possibilities for things to fail. It's not a bad way. It's okay to be positive. It's okay to be content, but you can be content and you can be comfortable with where you're at and not want to change it. But you need to always know that there's nothing that guarantees you in this life. Really, you can be disposed of. You can be replaced with someone cheaper who's not as good, so it's not even, I'm the best at it and I'm not going to be replaced. Like, you don't know, because when you're not in control and you're working for someone else, or you're working for a different system or institution, or even if that institution's great and supports you, there's something above them that has a different part of control. You need to just always be aware of that. And I feel that especially where we're at right now, with how limited funding in the world of education and where they put their money towards, and what's really valued, right? So you can be comfortable and you can be happy with where you're at, but you need to constantly be networking. You need to be fostering and building relationships. You need to not be just secluded in your own department. And you need to look at your work and education as more and bigger than just education in this one department, in this one institution. If you have a more national or even maybe even global perspective of education, of like inspiring people to go out there in the world, releasing strong change agents or people who are going to shift the culture and be positive role models. If you think of it more that way, then you won't be so tied to this one place, because you'll realize that your work is bigger than that place, no matter how amazing that place is. You know, it could be the top college in the world who also does the right diversity initiatives that are not just, you know, tokenizing or looking good on paper kind of efforts. It doesn't matter. Your work is still bigger than just one place. So I feel that having that type of mentality is and more big picture mentality on teaching is helpful. You know, and I think that we're so lucky to have things like LinkedIn and Twitter, where you can really connect and communicate with people from the comfort of your living room. You know, you don't have to constantly be going to these places with your resume in your hand. You can just build a relationship. You can do Zoom. You know, you can do these kinds of things. You have to put the work and effort and build those relationships so that when you actually do need that person, it's not just a hungry, hey, yeah, I just met you. Would you want to help me out with a job? It's like, oh, I built a relationship with you for a good year or 5 years, and now I see something opening up in your department. You already know me. I don't have to prove myself to you suddenly in a desperate attempt. You know, what's up?
Yes, ma'am. Build your network before you need it. So you're doing a lot of things, speaking, presenting, etc. When do you know an idea or a project you're working on isn't working and it's time to pivot?
Oh, so hard. I think that my work, like, and just projects that we do, I kind of think of it as a relationship. So it's like I have a relationship with this project. And if you look at it like that, when you have a relationship with a person, and it's just not working out, where all that's now really left is the time that you've put into it, that's not really good enough. You know? So when you're in a relationship that's not working out, but you're like, your main thing that's holding it together is that, well, I put 5 years into this. Like, that's when you really need to know that you need to get out. So although I don't believe in just giving up, and I believe in putting your all into things and putting your energy, and if it doesn't work out, it was a great learning experience. It's going to help you for the next one. You have a lot of failures before you have a success, etc. So do the work, but I also feel like you need to know that at certain points, it's what's holding you is that you've put so much work in and you're being stubborn, as opposed to just realizing like that the output is not ever really going to go, is not ever going to be worth what you're putting in anymore. And yes, you've put 5 years, 2 years, 6 months, whatever, but think about all this time that you could add to it with still no real progression. So that's kind of how I look at it. You need to just say, it's what's keeping me here, the time and the energy I've invested in it, and is that more than what I've actually seen as progress? Then I just let go, because it's just going to keep going that way. We're going to be on this hamster wheel going nowhere. And it's hard to do. You got to do it.
I hear you.
It's hard because you don't want to, you're like, I still think it can work if these 7 million things change. No, get out.
Wow. There's so much I can add there and say because of the experience I told you about before we started the show. And it really, and I was talking to my wife about it, and the incident really woke me up. It really got me thinking about what is the impact you want? What is the work you want to do? And how can you best maximize and monetize your talents? And when that happened, I said, wow, gotcha. But I was forced to do that because of that situation. And now that's why I'm applying to all of these. Well, I'm not applying to everything, but I'm looking at positions in higher ed because it's time for me to pivot. It's time for me to.
But do you feel like if you wish you should have, do you feel like you should have pivoted on your own before? Or do you think that it was Because I know it was just surprising how everything worked out. But did you feel like now looking back, are you like, man, I should have just gotten out well before I was forced to?
Yes. But, going to that conversation earlier, I got comfortable because I like the people I work with.
Yep.
My boss is just so dope, very supportive. And I have a mortgage, so when you I'm 44, so I consider myself to be like a real grown adult. And so when I look at those bills, and the reality of I'm trying to build this wealth for when I'm in my 60s and beyond. I mean, we don't have any children, so I'm not building that type of wealth to pass down. But when I look at that, all of that is predicated upon income. And so I should have, but I never thought that because income was coming in, and I did enjoy the people that I work with. I was comfortable in my role. I felt good about my skills, and like other things, like look, I've been doing this job for 5 years. I have a great handle on what I'm doing. And thinking back, I should have done that beforehand, because I should have taken stock of where I wanted to go, earlier, looked at my skills, and made the decision earlier to start planning my exit instead of someone telling me, your exit may be here sooner than you think.
And maybe even just having that mentality of not even like, oh, wow, this is great. I love everyone working with and I need to plan an exit. Even just thinking, well, what's next? What's in 3 years? And always just feeling like you need to be growing up. If I'm not going to move up, like this could be great and amazing. But we should never get comfortable in the role that we're in for the rest of our life either, unless it's like a role that you can permanently have, like a family member or something like that you're taking that role. But I will never take a job and just think, oh, everything's perfect anymore. I've done it before. But now, just with my learning experiences, I wouldn't ever take a job and be like, oh, everything's perfect, without thinking of like, okay, I hope in 2 years I'm going to see a progression. Because if I don't, no matter how great everything is, I'm out. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. And that's where that other conversation with like the building and the networking. And I always tell my students too, I say, don't like, I know, cause they're in that focus of like, I just need a job. When I get my master's, I want to get a job in higher ed, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I tell them is build all the networks, do as many interviews as you can, foster those relationships, even if it's not a position that you'd want. Maybe there'll be a different position at that university. But then I also say, as soon as you get your job, you need to start meeting people, as many people you can access at that job. So if you got a job in academic advising, you need to also know people in financial aid. You need to know people at disability services. And not just so that you have a job in those positions if you want to get out, but so that you actually know you become an expert in this area, so that you're not someone who only knows academic advising but has no idea how the rest of the university works. Right? So it's like that part too, just really always thinking about how can I grow? How can I progress? Is part of it, but a lot of times we learn those things the harder way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So before we go, what is your call to action for those individuals who want to make that transition, but they're afraid to do so?
Make the transition to go to a different career?
Whether it's another career or apply for another position, leave their current job and become an entrepreneur. Just, they're itching to do something different, but they're just afraid to do it.
Yeah, that's such a good question. We don't live in the culture of you just major something in college and that's what you do for the rest of your life anymore. We have, on average, people changing their careers twice in their lifespan. So, and I did it myself. It's very, very scary. You can't just say, oh, just go leave your job and go explore, because people have bills, people have, responsibilities. But I would say that the unknown is very, very scary. but it's so necessary for progression. And I mean, I tell my daughter this popular story about the butterfly and the struggles, right? So you can actually go and be impatient and pull the butterfly out of the cocoon early, but it will never be able to fly, right? It has to go through that struggle so that it can become the butterfly. So you have to accept there's going to be struggle, and do what you can early on to figure out what that next step's going to be. And a lot of what that next step is going to be is doing things you might not like, or realizing, oh, I don't really like this, I'm not that into it. Because that's what I did. I was a tax accountant and I made really, really good money, and I just felt unfulfilled. And I was like, I think I want to get an education. I had no idea I would do what I do now. But at the time I was taking some steps while I was working. I tutored a bit. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just have my own tutoring company, or maybe I'll work at a middle school. Maybe I'll be a college counselor, thinking different kinds of things, not knowing the answer was okay, because I was still doing small things, tutoring middle school kid once a week. And then once I actually, added more kids, I started realizing and learning what it would take if I did want to go into teaching in a high school or having those kinds of positions. Now is the work that it's going to take something that I could see myself doing? Is it something that is going to be an outcome that I'm going to be happy with or not? So I just kind of took it day by day, but did small little efforts to learning and growing in that area, becoming more knowledgeable about it, to realize if that was something I really wanted to do or not. So I feel like that's part of it. Just really like, okay, you think you want to do this, you're interested in it, whether you do it or not doesn't matter. Let's go to an info session. Let's, do a volunteer opportunity that's going to be a few hours a week that's doable for now, while you're at a job. If you just lost your job, you got laid off, or you just quit and you couldn't take it anymore, okay, what can we do that's productive, that is not overwhelming? And kind of, I feel like just knowing that you're not going to get the answer until you go through that experience of the unknown is part of the process. And that's actually what I've seen have the most positive outcomes, where people are actually not just jumping, okay, I want to change and I have to get a job, so I'm just going to jump into this. Taking that time and going through those unknowns and those confusions is where I've seen the outcome, where people actually end up more content and happy with what they've chosen. That's, I think, what my advice is.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Noosh, for dropping the gems on the show today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was a great interview. And I hope that people who hear the episode will be inspired to take just one step. I think that first step is the most important part in it, because if you can take that step, you can then move forward.
Yeah, take that first step, as small as it is. There's nothing too small, really. And think of it as like any sort of a change you're going to do in your life, right? Like, you might say, oh, I really want to incorporate exercise in my life. I mean, I definitely am more the person who's like, then just go for a walk around your block today. And that's great. That's more than yesterday. That's all you need to do.
Excellent. Now, people, you know how I do this. Go to SoundCloud, iTunes, leave a comment, subscribe. Let me know what's going on, because your boy's trying to get Oprah on the show, and I want her to know that I'm doing big things around here.
Yes.
As always, people, thank you for checking out the show. Again, thank you, Dr. Noosh, for coming on.
Thank you.
You are welcome. As always, people, invest in you, EDU. Peace.